Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Mama K here with Read with Mama K. And I know it's been a minute since you've seen this mug on YouTube doing a video that is discussing books. But I just recently finished up Do What Godmother Says by L.S. Stratton. And I really want to talk about it because this book was fascinating. For one, this is my first book of L.S. Stratton, who is a Black thriller author. Specifically, with this book, it was a Gothic thriller. And anytime you throw Gothic in anything, I'm going to read it because I'm going to assume that it's dark, it's creepy, it's eerie, it's just really set in this dark space where anything and everything that can happen, and there's going to be a lot of twists and plot turns, and you just don't know until the very end how it's all going to play out. So I was really excited for this book, and I have to say, initially, when I started reading it, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this because, again, she's a new author to me. But I was like, let me keep reading. And if you have not read Do What Godmother Says, I think you should stop watching this video right here and there because there are going to be some spoilers in this video. However, if you have read it, then you know what I'm about to say next is completely true. The main central character, which is Shanice, this woman, she was so dense, so wrapped up in her own bubble, and so isolated from the real world that the choices in which she would make is the reason why I kept reading this book. Because, baby, listen, Shanice was getting slapped red flag after red flag after red flag. And for whatever reason, she was just not picking up the signals that were being put out there in order to know that she was in danger, right? But let's take this back because this story is actually centered, and I read the author's notes, and I want to share that with you because I found the notes as to why this book even exists to be very intriguing. So the author's note says, nearly 4 years ago, I stumbled upon a story of Charlotte Osgood Mason, Harlem Renaissance patron and the inspiration for the character Maud Balkman, while reading an article about Zora Neale Hurston's posthumous release work Barracoon. Now, it goes on to talk about how Charlotte was the inspiration for the story and how, while there was some similarities in her and the character Maud Bachman, there was also some differences. But it was the similarities that were pretty striking, and which ultimately, when all was said and done, that cost Charlotte her reputation. So Charlotte, like Maud in so many ways, she was this rich woman who married into money, and with her and her husband, they built a wealth they generated wealth, I should say, enough so that they were able to take on all of these pet projects, right? And they use it as philanthropy. So, anytime there was an artist that she took a liking to and saw that they had the capability of being and producing great work, she would pour into them. She would do that financially, also provide them with housing and board, and just really took care of them. But they had to do everything that was required of them in exchange for her generosity. And that was the same for the character Maud in the book. Now, Maud takes it a step further because she's also involved in the occult. And so with the occult, there are things that she does in order to advance herself in the occult, which ultimately leads to Estelle Johnson, who is also a part of the centralized story set in the 1920s, becomes a victim and also is held captive because of what she is promised to Maud, and that is all of her creativity. Well, lo and behold, there's this bounce back between the 1920s and present day, right? Where you have Estelle's story that's playing out, and then you have Estelle's story, which is a continuation generations later that spills into Shanice's life. And it's all centered around this painting that Estelle, and it was the last painting that she did, but Estelle painted this during her time of duress when she was held captive by Maud and the people who work for Maud Bachman. And so this painting, 112 years later, lands in the hands of Shanice because her grandmother, who it was passed, who inherited it, but it was passed down from what she assumes is her great great grandmother, and it is. She gives it to Shanice and say, "Hey, you know what? Go ahead and take this painting because it's your time. It was passed down from to me. Now I'm passing it down to you so that you can pass it down to the next generation. But I'm selling the house because I know you don't want it. And with that being said, this painting really needs to stay in the family, and you need to take ownership of it." Well, Shanice takes ownership of the painting, but there was something about the painting that just kind of took her off guard. And so she wanted to start searching out more for the artist. And it was her grandmother who actually told her initially about Estelle and how the information on the back of the painting was going to lead her down this road of finding out more about Estelle. And when I tell y'all, it was literally like reading Alice in Wonderland, right? How Alice stumbled up on something that just caught her curiosity and how she stumbled down the rabbit hole. Well, this is what ends up happening to Shanice. She ends up stumbling down this rabbit hole of information and past history in the life of Estelle Johnson. And in that, she learns that there was other bodies of work that was out there floating, that was attached to Maud Bachman was now being put up for auction. And then she reaches out to this auction house, right, where this is supposed to be happening. And in turn, she meets this guy who is wanting to find out more about this painting. So they agree to meet, and they do. And in doing so, opens up a whole other world of darkness where now Shanice is being stalked. People are being killed. Her apartment gets ransacked and broken into. And baby, when I tell you the amount of red flags, because during that time at the very beginning when she is being stalked, she meets this gentleman by the name of Noah, and right off the bat, for me as a reader, he's a red flag. And it's things that he says and where he shows up and just all of the timing with things that are constantly happening when she is with him. Timing is in the details. And I feel like L.S. Stratton did that with the purpose of drawing the readers in to pay attention to the details that Shanice doesn't, to be able to put the pieces of the puzzle together, right? And so it was a really interesting read when all is said and done, because it was my first book of L.S. Stratton. What I really tried to do is just go with the flow, read the story, acknowledge certain things that were happening, but to just allow myself to just be immersed in the story. And while I'm putting things together in my head in the background, allow the story to unfold the way that she wanted it to, the way that it was supposed to be told. And then have that aha moment at the end where I said, I knew it. And it's exactly what happened. I knew without a doubt, when all is said and done, who the true players were, right? Who was a benefit of her, who really wanted to help her versus the people who really wanted to take advantage not only of her ignorance, but her vulnerability. And what I did end up finding out, which I had thought from the very beginning, is that Estelle, not Lewis, was her grandmother. And it just wrapped it up really nicely for me. This was a really well written, very intriguing, and an awesome book. So if you have not checked out Do What Godmother Says by L.S. Stratton, I would highly recommend, especially if you love a good thriller, to check this book out today. I hope you guys have an amazing day. Peace and blessings.